hair is such a defining, like, just community kind of thing. Because, like, if you have curly hair and you are over the age of, let's say, I don't know, 20, like, you grew up your entire life with people giving you shit for your hair. Like, I remember when I was in high school, one time a dude, like, took a pencil and threw it at the back of my head. And when I was like, what the fuck? He was like, I wanted to see if it would stick. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Wow. Like, no, it's not gonna, you just hit me in the head with the sharp end of a pencil, dude. What the fuck?
It's not alien technology, it's human hair.
Right, like, exactly. It's attached to my fucking head. But that's like, you know, this is a while back. Anyway, here's the thing. I have some. Everybody here's got some.
You know, it's also a thing, Labor Day, and it's now.
It's Labor Day.
I just want
happy fake Labor Day.
I know it's Labor Day, but I also just really want to get this out early and remind everybody to put their 9/11 trees up. Because if you forget, like, I always do it on Labor Day, I put my 9/11 tree up so that I can make sure that President Jesus does not forget to come by my house and deliver our barrel of crude on 9/11 Eve. You know, so I just wanted to remind everybody, like, it's Labor Day, let this be your reminder.
I had genuinely forgotten that 9/11 was going to happen in a few days.
Alive when 9/11 happened? Had you been born yet?
No, not by 2 months.
Okay. That's
for everybody.
I was 10. I was 11.
Yeah, I was in like 6th grade or something.
I just turned 11. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a kid, and things have only gotten worse since then. So, you know.
Yeah, things have gotten worse steadily since I was alive.
Yeah. Anyway, happy Labor Day. I'm sorry if you have a job that's making you work today.
I'm sorry.
Related note: not safe hosts for unionizing.
It's true. Hey everybody, welcome. To Not Safe for Wonks. Brandon's here. Hey everybody, I'm doing good. Leia's here. Hello, Leia. Rachel's here.
Hey everybody, if I sound like shit today, by the way, it's because my air conditioning's out and I'm using lots of fans. And that's also why I'm sweaty. Anyway, hi.
Karishma's here.
Hi everyone.
Also here as special guest, Zainab Mohsini. We love it. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm good. So good to see y'all. I've been on here and I've been seeing people. Like, it's so good to see people. It's such a visual person too.
I really love being here, and usually you're here like as an audio guest. This is your first time like as a guest on the live stream, which is something we're doing, and people love watching us on the stream, maybe more than the podcast. So we're like, hey, keep making it.
I mean, Brandon, have you seen you?
Have I seen me? Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good. Have any of us seen any of us? Really? We like imagine looking like this, and all of us get together, and our first move is we should make an audio show. This was not smart thinking on any of our parts, really. So listen, like we've got an hour, we got a lot that's actually going on. Y'all are both our two special guests here are both from Virginia. So, Karishma, can you talk about like the situation with qualified immunity, which is in the news right now in Virginia? Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, I mean, so I think like this has become like kind of a national thing. Like people kind of all over the country are talking about this bill, and you know, it was really shocking to kind of see it all unfold so quickly. You know, I think a lot of us are still kind of processing, you know, what happened and what the reasoning was for some of the decisions that were made. You know, qualified immunity, it's something very basic that we're like all over the country trying to, you know, get rid of. Qualified immunity allows police officers to, you know, engage in tactics and use of police force, excessive force, without any sort of accountability. They're shielded basically from that accountability, and so you know, qualified immunity has become a large part of the conversation we're having around you know, what it means to hold police accountable to the community. This bill, I mean, I think maybe Zainab can talk a little bit more about it, but it didn't pass. There were, I think, 5 Democrats that voted against it and 3 that abstained from voting in it. And it was a pretty pretty much along party lines. But there were problems with it. I don't really know that there was a good answer to either decision. So,
Zainab, do you have any thoughts on the composition of the bill? Was it a good bill? Was it a bill that should have been taken back to formula, or are you disappointed by its passage? Just what are the politics for folks that aren't in Virginia and don't know?
Yeah, so I read the text of the bill, and I think it's really interesting. I think that a couple of people came out and said that the bill wasn't strong enough, and I think that the language that they were trying to say wasn't strong enough was the fact that what the bill had indicated that it was going to end qualified immunity for police officers who were on duty. So, and then police officers who weren't on duty didn't have to abide by that law. So I think that that's what people are mentioning when they talk about how it's watered down. But I echo Karishma completely, that I think that we're literally in the middle of a racial justice movement, and I think the least people can do is pass this bill and then move on to fixing it and making it better. Because yes, there's room for improvement, but I think that we need this first step. Virginia is a majority Democrat, and one delegate said that they didn't vote yes on it or abstained because their husband is a sheriff, and sheriffs were a part of it, and sheriffs are elected officials. But I think that sheriffs also need accountability. They're also people who enforce the law. They're also people, yes, they're elected officials, but sheriff elections tend to be really small. It doesn't have a huge turnout. It doesn't have an entire community come together and decide to elect this person. And I think that it's a very minimal first step that should have passed, especially having a majority Democratic House. So it didn't pass, which is incredibly disappointing. Yes, absolutely, I was disappointed. I think that so much of us as Democrats is, oh, we can't do anything because Republicans are blocking us. But then here's a Democratic majority, and we couldn't do the bare minimum. Especially disappointed with the progressives, because I think that I personally, as a progressive, take racial justice as a main part of when I ran, as a main part of my political campaign. I think it's a issue that needs to be resolved. We need to make structural changes, and if we can't get this one step passed through, and then I don't know if, what else we can hope for.
Do we know, and maybe it turns out that we don't know, and we all sound silly. Do we know what states have qualified immunity outlawed?
I think there are a couple. I don't know them off the top of my head. I think that after the murder of George Floyd, there were a couple states who were quick, who went and ended qualified immunity, but I don't know specifically what states. But I think that, I'm sorry, what?
Maybe Washington?
Maybe, I don't know.
Yes, I've heard Washington and Colorado both have had. Yeah. So I don't have the exact list in front of me.
And this is part of sort of an ongoing pattern of frustration I have with the Democratic Party in particular. And obviously, some of us here are running as Democrats or have run as Democrats. So I don't want to say every single Democrat is trash, right? But sure. The Democratic Party as a whole, they pay a lot of lip service to justice and equality and especially racial equality. And then when it comes time to actually put some action into it, they just choke, and it's oh, well, we're trying to get reelected. And it's who? By who?
It actually, Colorado is the first state.
Mm-hmm.
And Virginia would have been the second had this passed. And I also sometimes is the enemy of the good, because we have these discussions and then the bill passes and then we bring on a critic that says, well, there's this loophole and that loophole and the other loophole. So we're always going to have to balance, is this a good message? Is this a good foot in the door versus how effective it is? And, that isn't something that, we get frustrated because we're people that watch the political process closely. But that's also something that exists on the right. It's a long slog to make dramatic changes to legislation, and these things kind of get attacked in bits and pieces. if at all, because it's a system that unfortunately is designed to move very slowly.
It's sort of
Here's
echoing.
the thing that I'll say about qualified immunity. You just mentioned something that a lot of people don't say out loud, which is that the system is not designed to work for us. And
Right.
so, although qualified immunity is trash in and of itself, because it doesn't hold people accountable to just the basic tenets of their job, we also then, like, what is the point? Like, yeah, sure, remove qualified immunity for police officers. You're still kind of using the same system, the judicial system that wasn't built for us. You're kind of putting accountability back into that system and hoping for the best. Like, we don't have accountability for, cops in general right now.
Right.
Like, what guarantees that justice when we remove qualified immunity? Like,
Right.
we need to be looking beyond some of those.
Yeah, and the core objections to this is that it potentially increases taxes. There's always the tax deal, because the police departments would have to buy insurance, because basically, like, we've done a previous episode on qualified immunity. So if you're here in the comments, like, what is it? You might have to go back in the archives and look as we go into this in detail. But basically, to save a lot of time, qualified immunity basically prevents you from being sued if you are screwing up in a way that is unique. If there's a case where there's a clear-cut precedent, then you're open to lawsuit. But if you think of the ways that human beings interact, how often is there a situation, an interaction, where two things are identical in terms of liability and the chain of events? It's very rare.
Right.
So it's basically a blanket immunity from those kind of civil suits and things like that. So
Right.
The argument is just, well, we're going to have to go and buy insurance for the case that, if we are sued in the future, we've got to go and handle all of that. Another argument, I guess, is that, the cops, they're going to have to second guess themselves. And I think that for most people, if you're living in Virginia, you're like, maybe there should be some more second guessing, because these incidents are happening too much. And it's not just stuff that makes the news, right? When we talk about these things, it's not necessarily like somebody was on video and there was a shooting. It's like just regular violence that maybe the person at the news desk is like, this happens all the time, throw it out. But you are got to live with your messed up shoulder in Andrea's case, or getting bonked on the head and you got a concussion and you got symptoms, and there's civil damage that's not always as sexy for a video, right? And doesn't get to the mainstream, but still has cash damages that reverberate through your life. And it kind of represents an opportunity for people to have redress in those situations. And finally, there's, unfortunately, you always have to deal with the police union, and they go, well, you're destroying law enforcement with this. Look who it is. It's the consequences of my own actions. And anybody who votes for this has to deal with that kind of pushback. So in a sense, and this sounds very grim, but it's a weird hopeful. Is it good that it was at least a party line vote? Are either of y'all in Virginia somewhat encouraged by the fact that you at least got the party on board for it? How do you feel about just?
I think that's the thing, is just it wasn't. There were Democrats who voted no and abstained from voting, and I think that the idea is that it's going to be reintroduced with stronger language. Again, I think in this coming week, but I think that it was watered down and nobody voted. So what is the plan to get? It has to be people who voted no and people who abstained have to agree with the language. So I think that it should have passed. I don't think that I'm encouraged by it not passing.
We don't have the whip count or anything, but it's possible that actually a more progressive version will pass. Basically, you've got to pick those votes up one place or another. So whether it's people that opted out because the law wasn't strong enough, or people that opted out because they just weren't on board with it, you got to find that one place or another. We don't need to go back into House of Cards logic or anything. Karishma, it's Labor Day, and on Labor Day, are we really going against the wishes of a union? Does that seem fair to you? Does that seem just on this day of all days? Our poor beleaguered police union really going through it. Where's the help, Karishma? I thought you were pro-labor. What's happening?
I think if you're pro-labor, you're anti-police union. Police unions do not belong in the labor movement. I think it prevents public accountability to have these almost like unfettered organizations where you consolidate all of this power and intimidation against the community. There's so much you can go into that with, but yeah, police unions, no, they don't. I don't think they should exist, but I definitely don't think they should belong in the labor movement.
I think if we go into like what a union does and what are the aims of policing, like a union is about people who don't have power individually banding together to ask things of their employer that they would not be granted individually. If we're talking about the police, these are people that already have immense societal power, and their employers are us. They're banding together to ask us, who is also the victim of their services, for changes to it. Just on the face of it, and in a deeper analysis, the aims of policing as an institution and as a profession are ideologically opposed to just the very concept of a labor union and why they are constituted. I think you'd be very scantily pressed to find a single instance of a labor union for police that has done something positive for anyone ever, except for the cops, of course.
Christy, no need for police unions. They're not part of the labor movement at all.
Fuck them.
I will say this though: if you are the police union, it's a great grift.
No, yeah,
absolutely. Because when you think about it, the police exist primarily to protect the property of the wealthy, who also make all of the laws. So when you threaten to stop protecting their property, you actually really do kind of like have them, by their short hairs. Just a little. It's a good grift.
Maybe, and this is just a suggestion, maybe the fact that there's not like an organized movement to bust labor unions and there's no billionaire trying to abolish them, it's probably a good sign that like they might not need to be in like the AFL-CIO as much as some of these other groups that are under constant attack by the most powerful people in society. I don't know.
What? Maybe. Well, and I also want to add, when the only threat you have as organized labor is we're going to stop doing our jobs, and everybody would like you to stop doing your job, like that's not great. They don't have that much power on the like national level, because none of us want them to keep doing their jobs at all.
They're holding us hostage with the threat of no longer holding us hostage.
Right. It's like...
And this has been done. There have been examples of, I forget the exact figures and statistics, but there was about a week period where the New York City Police Department went on strike, and crimes actually went down during that time. It's mind-boggling that these people have convinced us that they are necessary. Not us, but the societal us.
That's why that it's so important to connect all of this to labor and to the fact that our society criminalizes poverty, right? Because that is really the job and sort of the enforcement in praxis of police is to basically catch people living in poverty. That's to me, if you're investing in jobs, if you're investing in education, if you're investing in these things that solidify unions and to build that worker power, you're really taking away you're taking away those structures that lead people to desperation, that can't provide food for their families or pay rent, just the basic necessities of being a human. So to me, it's just so important to connect poverty to those issues and to the fact that police shouldn't exist.
I also think I'm going to say nascent police abolition movement. I mean, it's been around for a really long time, but it's been picking up steam recently. you know, it is directly related to, you know, a shift in our perception about justice in this country, I think. You know, police come from a very sort of punishment, punitive type of justice. And I think that there are a lot of people who believe in punishment as a tool. But in the last, you know, 30, 40 years of research, we have found that the only thing punishment really teaches is avoidance, right? So these things we're trying to create, we cannot actually punish people into doing. You know, we can't punish somebody into getting a job. We can't punish somebody into getting a house. We can encourage them. We can support them. We can give them the tools they need to make those changes, right? And so when people talk about the defund movement or the abolition movement, it's really useful to hammer home, like, this is all part of the same thing, right? Ending qualified immunity is all kind of part of the same shift in attitudes to getting people to really believe that ultimately the best way to get people to behave the way you want them to is to give them what they need to do it and encourage them.
I think that's very well said, and it's cool how we started with this small scale issue, and now we're talking about how we think about justice and how we think about each other.
Well, and I think that's sort of a keystone issue in furthering the police abolition movement and selling this to people, right? Because obviously, like, white people don't care about racism, by and large, right? This is just a problem with white supremacy. It exists. We've been struggling against it, and it is very, very difficult to get white people to care about racism. And I think a lot of that really hangs on this sort of older, you know, puritanical belief that God will punish you into doing the right thing. You know, so if we can sort of chip away at those attitudes, I think we can continue to sort of break down these structural barriers a little bit more and maybe get, you know, that last couple of Democrats who abstained or who voted no to really like see this as a fundamental and necessary shift in our approach.
That's very well said. Listen, we're going to let people reflect on that. We're going to take a quick break, maybe 30 seconds. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about like other stuff related to continued human survival. We're going to talk about like SNAP food benefits, just like keeping people on their feet through like the worst crisis of like the last 20 years or so. I don't know. We'll get back to it. So we'll see you in just a bit. What's up, everybody? We're back. Not safe for wonks. We're hanging out. Karishma's here. Zainab's here. And I just want to talk a little bit about like food benefits, just because they're in the news a lot lately. As we talk about state budgets and where our priorities are, that's just kind of come up a lot. And who is getting benefits is often like misunderstood or misinterpreted, because like the people that are getting SNAP is a much larger and broader group than the group that maybe is used and demonized by the media. And Rachel, I know you're somebody who's like big into food reform and how people are getting those needs. Can you talk generally about like the kind of people that are on SNAP, and can you talk about the importance of it and that kind of stuff?
So the statistics I have offhand are sort of more largely about government benefits, but I assume it's approximately the same. You know, the majority of people who are on government assistance or are being assisted by the government are white. They are young. You know, they are on it for about 2 years or less. Really, for most people, these services function the way they were intended, right? They help you get back on your feet, assuming you are one of the people who can actually access them, right? Unfortunately, we also set our limits for when you qualify for them way too low. Right? You know, we take the poverty line, which is already extremely low and well below subsistence and well below like any kind of secure physical living. And then we say, and if you're like $1 over that, screw you, you know, and it's this really broad misunderstanding of how these things work, and it's designed to really nickel and dime away from them. And, you know, every step of the way, it has been chipped away by the Republican Party and by, you know, conservative Democrats who are, you know, deficit hawks or whatever. And the only thing they care about is not spending the money. And in reality, like, this is really necessary. Having healthy food available to you is necessary, right? You can't study when you're hungry. You can't go out and like be creative when you're hungry. It's harder to keep a job if you're going to work hungry. Like, if you have kids and they grow up without food, that hurts them for the rest of their lives. And frankly, we have such a huge surplus of food, right? From the restaurant industry alone, we are wasting millions and millions of pounds of food. And in fact, restaurants are like our biggest offenders here. So why are we doing it? You know, why do we treat food the way we do? And again, it ties back into that sort of aforementioned puritanical belief that God is going to punish you into good behavior. And if you starve, it's because of your bad behavior, as opposed to, you know, a system that has fundamentally failed to equitably distribute resources.
I have a really interesting story. I was on the web. I forget where this was, but there was a story that I saw about like a mother and her husband, and they were talking about like kicking out the kid when he graduated from high school.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I too read it.
17, about to turn 18. Was it a Reddit thread then?
Yeah, it was like an our relationships thread. I remember this one.
Our relationships is always a nightmare, so this is another our relationships nightmare. And so the guy is like, I'm from the old school, and when you turn 18, you've got to get out there and make your own way in this world. And I think it's also partially like you're tired of living with a kid, and it's like, get out of here. I want to watch football. I want to relax.
I want my money back to do whatever with.
I want my money back. I'm tired of feeding you. And
yeah, you escaped as a young teen. How's that?
How's that been working out?
How's that working out?
Actually, it's working out great. You're in Montana. You're cool in it.
Yeah, but mainly because of the generosity of people around me. If I had done that on my own, I probably would have died freezing homeless in the 2019 Seattle winter.
Ding ding.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm actually applying to get on food stamps right now, which will be great. It's a little bit funny because most all of my money is coming from LBJ now because my partner has a AmeriCorps job, which is a Great Society program, and food stamps is as well.
I remember when you first made that quip, you were like, yeah, most of my money comes from LBJ. I was like, LeBron James, is he cutting you a check?
To be fair,
that would be pretty cool.
LeBron is extremely generous, and that is, in fact, why they're renaming Akron Akbron.
Yeah. Leia, have you tried writing to LeBron? Have you asked LeBron for money?
I haven't done that yet. That's a good suggestion. First,
you've got to learn what basketball is. And then once you've done that...
I got to put my head into that.
But this story, it being a pandemic, like it being like a really dangerous situation for like anybody. You're going into the job market and you're going to be in competition with other kids. And these kids, they have support from their parents, right? So they can maybe opt out of a job that's like dangerous or like degrading to them. And I guess we'll talk about that as we celebrate Labor Day. But like, Zainab, what was your situation with your parents? And how is that like impacted your approach to public policy?
Well, so I'm somebody who received SNAP benefits. My family was resettled in the U.S. through United Nations High Commissions for Refugees. So for the initial years of my life, we were on SNAP. And a couple of things I wanted to echo what Rachel said is just like SNAP benefits, you have to qualify for them. If you're an undocumented person, you don't qualify for them because they're federal benefits, or they're benefits that most undocumented people don't qualify for. So we were immigrants, but we were documented immigrants, and we lived on it. In a family of 6 people, we got $580, and it's not meant to. I think that a lot of the history of SNAP is rooted in anti-Blackness, right? The welfare stereotype is that it's a Black woman trying to scam the system, which it doesn't give you enough money. It's just that people are on SNAP benefits because they need to survive. So I was on it. I don't think it's obviously there's so many improvements that need to be made to SNAP. It's very restrictive. I always call it a control tactic of how rich people want poor people to spend their money. Of like, you can't buy certain things, you have to buy certain brands, you have to be very strategic about how you're going to make the little money that you get stretch for you to survive. And again, echoing Rachel, that, you know, food, like, you cannot live your life, you can't go to school, you can't work, you can't have it helps your mental health. It like impacts your mental health, it impacts your physical health. So food is like essential, but then SNAP is a program that I really, really support, and I think that there should be improvements to it, about more freedom as to how people should be able to sustain themselves when it comes to food. I think that for people who don't know, it's supplemental nutritional assistant program. I think in the richest country in the world, we have people who are starving or who get such little SNAP benefit because despite working multiple jobs, despite working their hardest, are reliant on food stamps, and it's still not enough. And I think that there should be more. It's based on the national poverty line, but it doesn't take into account housing cost. So for somebody who lives in Northern Virginia and makes money, but more than 50% of their income goes to their housing, they don't qualify based on the federal poverty line, but that doesn't mean that they can't use or shouldn't qualify to be able to feed themselves. Yeah.
And one of the things, like when we talk about taxes, when we talk about like that cliff, you know, you get over a certain amount and then suddenly you are dropped from your benefit, and it actually lowers your standard of living. SNAP actually doesn't have that. Like it's built in to be very gradual. There's a tax, and it's like 25 cents once you reach over a certain threshold, which is like unlike something like Medicaid, where they just snip you once you get a raise at your job, and you've got to make up some of this money.
Yeah.
And it's really a bummer, because the number one story that's like told about SNAP is like that story about like, I'm at the grocery store, I've worked all week, and I have like a can of beans, and there's a woman in front of me and she's eating meat, she's got steak. So like they and that hit people, that story resonates with people so much, and you don't realize that like you get those things and they last you the whole month. So it's somebody that's probably they've been eating dog food all month, equivalent. They've been eating like bologna sandwiches all month, and they get their benefits, and they're like, I'm gonna get like human food for the first of the month, and they get like 2 steaks, and then it's like World War III.
Right.
The concept of the welfare queen and the idea of welfare fraud is one of the most pernicious lies that was ever disseminated by government officials and by politicians in the past a long while, because welfare fraud does not exist on a meaningful scale. It is infinitesimal, the amount of money that is defrauded from welfare programs.
Well, and you know, when people
do not have to worry about it.
When people bring that specific talking point up, I really think we should interrogate it. You know, we should look them in the eyes and say, okay, how many people who actually need it are you willing to let die to make sure that nobody who doesn't actually doesn't?
But
how many people? And I mean, to be clear, I think every single person deserves this. I think that this is just a given, that food should be a human right, you know, that housing should be a human right. And I think that all of these things are intrinsically tied, right? But when somebody says, oh yeah, but you know, there are people who I don't want to help because they're not doing the work, I want to say, okay, how many people who actually meet your standards are you willing to let die for this? What is the number? Because right now, there are people dying because this legislation and this policy has been written in ways designed to keep people off of it because of this rhetoric, and ultimately really because rich people want to stay rich and they don't want to pay taxes.
And they want to control how like poor people eat.
Yeah,
like, I think that it's huge. Like sometimes I hear people like they had an iPhone. I'm just like, do you know like you need a phone? Like in this world, you need like a phone to be able to get a job, to be able to like do like live life. It's not like just because you have a phone or you have a car that somehow you disqualify. You're disqualified from eating. So I think that 100%. I think that SNAP benefit shouldn't be up for debate. I get people who are like, oh, I don't want to support those type of people. I'm just like, if I work and I'm paying taxes, even if I have to pay extra, and somebody gets to eat a good meal in a day, like let them take advantage. Like go ahead, like you deserve that.
Yeah, Sign is here saying my mom was a social worker and dealt with welfare fraud all the time. People who lived in Mexico collecting benefits here and stuff. Yeah, listen, I lived in the ghetto of Atlanta. Yeah, I also witnessed SNAP fraud. In the sense of like you would be ready to like buy your groceries, and somebody on SNAP will be in line, and just depending on where you are in the country, you have this story too, and would be like, yeah, okay, listen, I will buy your food since you just got food with my card in exchange for like the cash that you've got in your pocket. We'll do a trade-off. I'll go get something that's not allowed on SNAP. Like I'll go get some hot food, or I'll get like some beer or whatever. And you know what I would do? I'd be like, yeah, buddy, that sounds great. Because like
welfare fraud is cool.
Welfare fraud is cool.
That is a take. That is a spicy meatball.
I just don't understand how the concept of food being something that we all need to just breathe and do like basic bodily functions can be like in the same conversation as the word fraud. Like, how can you be defrauding something that is your right? You should be able to get food whenever, wherever, however you need it to survive. And that's one of the biggest like lies of capitalism, I think, is like that we have a finite number of resources and that only like hard work and a certain like population of people that put in the effort should be qualifying for certain benefits. Like talking about food as a benefit is just crazy to me.
Like, yeah, I get it. If you're like a fucking rich person who spends like $13,000 on a burger because it has gold in it, like, fuck you. But like, come on, you know, like, I just sometimes.
But people also don't know, like, you could be like a millionaire today and on the street tomorrow. Like, don't you want to be able to qualify for those programs with basic human needs that just all of us are struggling for at just a daily level, like a daily basis?
Well, and again, it ties back into the punishment attitude we have culturally. It ties back into this very, very archaic approach to shaping and modeling people's behavior, you know? And I think we can all agree, like in the general sense, right? Not in the sense of like, we're going to do eugenics or we're going to manipulate people with mass psychology, but in the general sense, we want to empower people to be their best selves, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is a very new idea. You know, again, I think it all ties back into like, if you are in poverty, the only way to fix that is to make you in so much pain that you suddenly develop whatever superhuman like power you need to transcend, right? And this sort of like ablution of pain.
And what we see, and it's great that you mentioned it like that. What you see from the spending habits of people who are on SNAP is identical to like regular people. Their willpower is not higher or lower or anything like that. This is an article from the Washington Post. It's called "What Many Americans Get Wrong About Food Stamps," according to an economist. And if you just Google it, like you'll find it. It's pretty easy to find. And here's what the economist said. The main thing we were interested in a study is how SNAP participants compared to eligible non-participants. And the answer is they're not much different. The Food and Nutrition Service released the study in last November. It was well done given the questions. But basically the study asked, how do people spend their SNAP benefits? But SNAP participants also use additional cash to purchase food, and it didn't consider that. It could be that SNAP participants spend less on junk food than eligible non-participants, but that they use the benefits for soda and cash for other things. Or maybe it has to do with the fact that SNAP starts at the start of the month. So when you like get your SNAP benefits, you buy things that are non-perishable. And I know this because like I got relatives that used SNAP when I was a kid. and you would literally buy stuff like soda because you got the benefits for them, and it wouldn't like go bad, and then you would spend money on fresh stuff like throughout the rest of the month. So yeah, I kind of thought that was incredibly interesting just as a point.
Well, and that's not different from how people usually buy their groceries, right? People, given the opportunity, would rather buy dry goods like in larger quantities. If you're going to buy it and use it all the time, it makes sense to buy a larger quantity of that less frequently, right? And so this idea that like, I don't know, that like there's something wrong with that is so just deeply offensive.
We also we intentionally create food deserts in communities, and then we wonder why the only available food around people are the unhealthy, junk food crap that people say like, oh, why should, SNAP benefits be going to things that are unhealthy or whatever. And it's just another way of policing people's lives and trying to control, what people are doing. It's like we take away all of these resources from communities, and then we want to also control how people use their SNAP benefits.
And frankly, I think that these attitudes persist, in no small part because the people in power are bitter and they are unimaginative and they resent other people for their own shortcomings and their own pain. And they don't want to actually face the reality that, they are not somehow better or more deserving, or, they don't deserve this chip on their shoulder that they have about poverty. You have to be able and willing to humble yourself, right? And these people just aren't.
You could also just be describing like the average YouTube commenter. So you're getting there. You're getting there. Does anybody have
never read the
else?
Comments.
Yeah, I don't either. Does anybody else have anything they want to add just on the subject of SNAP and food security or anything like that?
I think that one thing I wanted to add was just, I think that there are a lot of undocumented people who don't qualify for SNAP benefits. And I think that how can we live in the richest fucking country in the world and have people go hungry? Like, how can you sleep at night knowing that? And I think, Karishma, you might know about this, but I volunteer with this organization called Sanctuary DMV, and we deliver food to people who are undocumented. Like, we deliver groceries to them because of COVID, and they don't have like any other way to acquire food. And I think that SNAP benefits should not matter on the stat. Like, it should not be restricted based on your documentation. Like, that just blows my mind that there's restrictions for food for people who have children, people who are like working hard. So I just think that we as a society have a lot of like reflections that we need to consider, like mirror ourselves as to how can we allow people to sleep hungry.
One thing I want to connect is that I think over 1 million veterans are on SNAP benefits. I mean, these are people who have served our country in war. When we talk about the GOP and Republicans constantly wanting to cut SNAP benefits, this is not just for undocumented people. This is not just for the Black and brown community. This is not just for single mothers. This is about veterans as well, like people who have put their lives on the line. And we can afford trillions of dollars in a bloated military budget every year, but we can't provide veterans with food and housing to sustain themselves, even healthcare. Like, all of those things are connected. So it's not just, it's really important, I think, to break that narrative of who that person is that we constantly see that is benefiting from these federal programs. Everybody benefits from universal programs. That's the reason why they're so strong. And that's the reason we should be pushing for things like SNAP to be universal.
So everybody, that's our roundtable on food security.
I want to add one more thing, just sort of a broad logic and reason thing for our big logic boys in the comment section.
I love logic.
In fact, studies have been done, and every dollar you put into public spending comes back as like $2 in the economy. So if you really want to get out of this like horrific depression that we're about to just go spiraling into, like, this is a direct way we can prevent these things from completely crashing and burning that has been substantiated by science.
Yes, this is not even like a controversial, like any conservative economist that lives in the realm of like facts will admit that food stamps, every time that there's any kind of clinical test, has been shown to be the most efficient form of government spending.
Like you were saying, it benefits everybody in the entire community.
Because when you get it, like, there's like, really, when you talk of things that are wasteful, you think of like the military, and you think of like all of these other parts of our government that just have tremendous amounts of largesse. When we talk about food, like, they literally just go to the store that's right here next to them, and they buy like milk.
How dare they?
Yeah, that goes right back into the economy.
Funding that goes into food stamps doesn't drone foreign countries. We see an immediate...
This is the problem, of course.
What a point.
That's the problem.
We need to have an infinite budget for drone striking other countries. And therefore, we can't afford literally anything else.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take 30 seconds. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and we're going to celebrate Labor Day by talking about all of our sacrifices for labor. Labor is not just it's not just union jobs working at a factory. It's like your job that you go to. So we'll talk a little bit about the jobs that we've had to do in the past. We'll talk about some dangerous, hard jobs. We'll do it all. We'll come back, 30 seconds, take a breath, and we'll do it. Welcome back to the Big Logic Boy crew. Big Logic Brandon here in the house.
Massive brains.
Big Logic Karishma in the house. Big Logic also here in the business. Leia, when we think logic, we think you. And Rachel,
I'm a logic boy.
Pete, you actually like studied logic. Like
I did in fact.
How are you the dumbest person on the show, and you like went to school for logic?
Well, actually there's a paradoxical effect when you go to school and you get 2 degrees, one of them in a science and one of them in an art, specifically philosophy and logic. It breaks your brain and you become a shit poster, and you are no longer capable of communicating like a normal person ever again. And also, like, frankly, I mean, I have to speak to my audience. Like, I try not to talk over people. So I try to kind of play it like I'm a little dumb, because men in particular find really smart women threatening.
That's not true.
Yeah, of course not.
So listen, it's Labor Day, and we're talking about jobs. JOBS, and we love them. We have to have them in order to eat and survive. For some reason, we're working here on Labor Day, but really, when you do this, it's not work.
We have transcended into the Marxist ideal of making our work play.
Yeah,
we're doing socialism right now.
That's true. Even more than socialism. The hot communist girls of Twitter eat your heart out. Like, this is the real.
This is socialism.
This is the real revolution right here.
Right.
To be fair, the real revolution right here does include hot communists of Twitter. So
okay, let's talk about. We're going to talk about some of the worst jobs in America and give a salute to them, the hardest jobs. But I also want to kind of tackle this on a personal level, and let's talk about like the worst jobs we've ever had and had to do for money just to get by. Leia, you're yawning. You're doing a lot here.
I'm tired.
Yeah.
Are you tired from doing the worst job in the world? What was the worst job you ever had in order to get paid, get these bills paid? Not this podcast, though. Don't count that.
You can't ask me that because I have had 2 jobs, and this is one of them.
Pick one. Pick the second one. It's the worst job by default.
If you say anything other than this is your worst job, I will be disappointed.
Yeah, I gotta say this is my worst job. My other job was pretty sweet. I got to pretend to chaperone around middle schoolers, and when we would go to lunch, instead of watching them, I would go play bowling on the lower level, and that was really fun. One time we went to a field trip. We were supposed to go to a field trip to the aquarium, and instead of doing that, I took the kids under my charge through like the market and gave them lessons about lying to their parents. It was really fun.
Leia Rose, professional child abandoner. We love to see that.
Oh boy.
Rachel, you've always got a good story, and your life has been just full of harassment and degradation. So can you talk about your worst job that you've ever had?
Sure. So I want to talk about the academy, and I want to talk about the way labor gets used in universities, because I did not get paid for this job, and in fact was paying to have this job. And, you know, ostensibly, the thing I get in return is that I get this really comprehensive education, right? And I was in this lab. There were two people. One of them physically could not string a coherent sentence together in a PowerPoint presentation. And we were expected to give 2 hour and 15-minute long PowerPoint presentations on completely new material that we had never seen before every single week. And so, like, I guess it was like, you're teaching yourself, right? But in reality, what it was me spending an extra, 4 hours a day frantically creating this PowerPoint presentation, because if we, for example, missed a period or put it in the wrong place, we would get our asses reamed. And then the other half of that job was just data entry for somebody else's failed experiment. I'm looking at you, Nolan. You were a really shitty boss. Hope you see it.
Get it together.
No, but I mean, also, I want to say again, I know it's like, oh, you're in college, that's not a job. Trust me, I was doing a lot of work for those people. It is a giant fucking lie. And I think it's a big part of why universities got pushed so hard, is because they are literally a Ponzi scheme. And it's just people trying to create free labor for their own pet projects.
Leia, I'd like a reaction gift from you. We've got a comment here.
Oh.
Do your job, Leia. How do you feel?
No, I don't think I will. I think it's funny. I think it's funny that I get paid to do things that I don't do. I think more people should do this. More people should give me money to do things that I won't do.
All right. So, actually, I can talk about my worst job, which was at a fast food place. And it was just, wait, no, that's actually not my worst job. My worst job is actually worse than working retail at fast food. Because I did some advertising, and I guess the confidentiality for this is over. I was at a low point in my life, and I write advertising, and I try to, the things I promote, I try to operate in some bounds of ethics, and they're loose bounds. They're just will it work for the person that is buying this? Is this a plausible thing that I'm selling? And my worst job was something that just absolutely wouldn't work. It was total scam. It was cancer treatment. And it was like a prayer-based, it was a biblical cancer treatment. And it had this whole wind-up sales pitch about the dinosaurs and how humans lived longer during the time of the dinosaurs. And I needed the money, and there was a lot of money that was being offered. So I said,
"Oh, Brandon,
well,
no.
I'm just I've got to eat, I've got to live. So I'm gonna talk about praying away cancer using the power of dinosaurs, and eating raw meat was also part of it. Literally, it was 3 of the worst scams rolled into one. If I recall this correctly, and I think my brain has just blocked a lot of this out. But I did it, and also as I did it. It wasn't just the fact that it was a super toxic, unethical product. It was also the client was terrible, and the client changed what they wanted every week. So I would write a massive feature-length letter about cancer, and then they would want to change it because they'd read something else. And if you've ever worked in advertising, the worst thing is when there's a second person that's weighing in on it. So they would be like, oh, I read this book about such and such, and can you put this in? Or my wife read a book about such and such, can you put this in? And so I literally did 3 times the amount of work that should have been done for it. And I didn't get paid for it. Well, I got paid the advance, but I only got half of the actual rate for this job. And because the client was frustrated because they didn't want to obey the contract that I'd written out. No, yeah, this was my face the entire time that I was working with them. And my partner on it was also just my partner on the job, his sister was a cancer victim, and like was doing this thing that they hated, like because they needed the money, and they were like, look, we're gonna do, like, we got to do this, we got to make it through the month, and we had like better jobs that were coming, but like, you know, you got to eat, and so we didn't even get the full amount for the job. It was just absolutely horrible. There are sub stories about how bad it was, but it was like basically like 45 day long nightmare where I was working like literally every day on like this ultra scammy product with also a toxic client that sucked. And I was very relieved, even if I didn't get my money for it, just to like not have the psychic burden of doing it. And it actually went, it got to market, and they used, of course, like 75% of my work because people are scum. And it didn't super go well for them because the customer service and support end, not my best hour of life. Karishma.
I mean, I just have to say, like, schemy product, toxic client, kind of sounds like Mike Bloomberg's campaign and how people literally take these jobs that were paying them like $6 to $10,000 a month for like the most like minimal basic like organizing roles, you know, kind of sell their souls because like they got to feed their family. Like, you're not going to knock the worker. That's just like the reality of
those people got an iPad though. They got an iPad. I would have killed to leave that job with an iPad. Let me tell you.
My worst job, it was actually my first job out of college. I had some pretty, you know, crappy, low-wage jobs through college, but I think this one kind of topped them all as far as just like how, I guess the word is toxic. It's kind of all around how toxic that job was. I graduated from George Washington University. Don't go there. There was like just tons and tons of debt that I was in. I owed debt to the university. I couldn't get my diploma. I was looking for teaching jobs, but no one would hire me without my transcripts, my diploma, which was being kind of held hostage because I owed a bunch of money. So I had like a $1,800 studio because I was living in DC and needed money to be able to pay that ridiculous rent. So I took a job at like a dog daycare. This is like
I'm imagining you and a dog, and I'm like, however bad this job was, you at least got to hold a puppy during your time there, maybe.
I know, but it's like this is like an open daycare. So this was like, imagine like 50 grown dogs like in one like little warehouse type space, and like two people trying to manage like all of this like energy. You know, we were getting paid like $9 an hour, $10 an hour.
So basically this was good preparation for being a teacher. Like
yeah, like, you know, like containment of personality and energy, and oh my God, it was a lot, but it was also like, you know, I saw animal abuse there. I saw like, you know, not only were workers getting exploited, but the animals were getting exploited. And like, without naming names, it's just like, you know, even every single day was a struggle because I wasn't making enough to pay my rent. There were many, many days where I was picking between getting my landlord a check or feeding myself. Like beans and rice were basically my staple for almost 2 years while I was trying to pay. And like, how do I pay like back my student loans while working like a $9.50 an hour job, paying $1,800 in rent? It was just like, it was like 2 of the most depressing years of my life. And yeah, you know, pay your fucking workers.
Hey, Zainab, how are you holding up? What was your worst job? What was the worst thing you had to do for money?
Gosh, do you have time? I think we're running out of time for that. I think that, so one thing I wanna, I guess, like verbalize is that I think that your worst job is not a reflective of you as a worker. It's the pay that makes it shitty. It's Jeff Bezos fucking makes it shitty. People who exploit your labor makes it shitty. So I've worked retail food service, and they all have like their own So 2 of my worst jobs. I have 2. I couldn't pick between them.
Hit them both. Let's do it.
Okay. So I used to be a courtesy clerk. So the only job that would hire you at 15 years and 7 months was a courtesy clerk at Safeway. I lived in Oregon, so they do like they return your soda bottle and water bottles, and you get 5 cents for it. So my job was to empty the bins. It fucking sucked. I hated it. I didn't speak English really well. I was like basically like doing bitch work. So basically I would wait for people to return their half drank soda bottle. Sometimes they're like spit from the chewing tobacco. It's gross. So like that, getting like $50 an hour. So I was doing that. And then, but I also, if somebody didn't find thing on the aisle, my job was to go back in the storage room and grab it. And I think one specific moment was they sent me to go get a cottage cheese. I'm like, what the fuck is cottage cheese? For like 15, 20 minutes looking for cottage cheese. And come on, I lived like rice was a food that I knew. Like cottage cheese wasn't a thing that people ate back in Pakistan. So my manager, I remember coming up to me, and I like understood this at the time, being like, "You're the biggest idiot I have ever met in my life," because I couldn't point out cottage cheese, and it was like disheartening. And I'm pretty sure like I cried on the bus and stuff like that. And then when I graduated college, I did a lot of temp jobs, and I worked at a university in the student affairs here in Northern Virginia. And like my job was to like answer questions to international students about their benefits and like housing and stuff like that. But I got no training, and they're like, "Oh, you just have to sit here, greet people, and sign them in the computer." And then fucking Amanda, her name's not Amanda, but like Amanda's gonna answer your questions, and Amanda wouldn't talk to me. So I would just like go stand in her door like a dumb, like an inanimate object, and she wouldn't, like, for good like 3, 4, 5 minutes I'd be like, well, they want to know, like, there's the student, and she wouldn't talk to me, like she wouldn't even acknowledge me. And it was so dehumanizing. I had like graduated college, I was, you know, I spoke English, I was like, you know, I dressed well, like all of these things that I was like, maybe back then people didn't, you know, respect me because I didn't speak English and didn't know what fucking cottage cheese was. But now, like, I knew, and she wouldn't talk to me, and it was just so stressful. Anytime a student would walk in, I'd be like, fuck, now Amanda's not going to talk to me. What the fuck am I going to tell you? Because I know nothing. Those were like, temp jobs suck.
Luckily, all of us made it, and we're all doing perfectly now. Life is all wonderful, and none of us have any problems at our jobs now. We all live in a utopia, but we circle back around to help out the little people.
Right. For sure. I'm about to go have my gold burger. So.
Yeah, exactly. So before we go to get our gold burgers, I want to do a quick roundtable because we've got a question from YouTube. Should we pay our workers even if they're just completely crummy like Leia? Quick roundtable. I'll go first. Yes. Karishma, what do you think? You're thinking really hard.
Pay your workers. Pay them all. Pay your workers. Yes.
Even if they're like Zainab, even if they're like Leia.
Yes, absolutely. Leia needs to eat.
Especially because they're like Leia.
Yeah.
Rachel, should you pay workers that are like Leia? Imagine having Leia on your payroll. How do you feel about this?
Let me put it this way, Sign. How would you like to be the one who's unfairly not paid just to avoid paying workers like Leia?
Oh, good Lord. Leia, we got to come to you for the roundup. Would you pay you at a job?
Yeah. You know, if I ever had the misfortune of managing workers, I would pay them handsomely, even if they were fuck ups, because I was the fuck up at one point, and I wanted money. So, you know, if I was in charge of fuck ups, I know what it's like.
Or give you a free SNAP, like just let you have SNAP.
Yeah.
And housing.
Guaranteed housing, guaranteed food, guaranteed education, guaranteed free time.
Yeah, and then don't
stop.
Pay up, you cheap
Doesn't
bastard.
matter. Every single person. Every single person, no matter what they do, no matter how terrible they are, guaranteed housing, guaranteed food, guaranteed education, guaranteed free time.
Yeah.
Period.
Karishma,
Yeah.
you have a podcast. It's coming out Wednesday, allegedly. We're still waiting on the official recording. I don't tell anybody that, but it's coming out Wednesday. Can you talk about it for our viewers so that we can always have that on hand? What's happening?
It's called Class Struggle. If you're interested in issues related to race and class and the intersections of all of those things, especially when it comes to the realm of education, that is what we're going to be talking about. Building the blueprint for a school system that liberates our children, and that really takes into account that schools are fixtures of the community. And right now they're mirrors of society. But that they really should be the very best vision of what society can look like when we guarantee housing for our people, when we guarantee healthcare for our people, when we guarantee education, economic freedom, when we guarantee all of those human rights to our people, what schools can look like and how schools can thrive in a society that treats people with dignity. So hopefully it comes out on September 9th. No, it will. And I'm very excited to share it with all of you.
Hell yeah. Does anybody else have anything they want to promo or talk about? Rachel, you're on mute.
Every fucking time. If you would like to get shouted out on this week's Bitch Brunch, please share with me in the comments or send me a DM some of your best bad dating stories, especially if they have screenshots. We love screenshots. And we are going to just talk about why men send these kinds of messages and what they're trying to accomplish. So that's Friday, 4 o'clock. Anyone who identifies as a bitch is invited.
Do you have any? I know you have plenty of people who've gotten those. Do you have any guests lined up? Are you talking? Are you in?
I'm reaching out to people at the moment and seeing sort of who bites, who's free. 4 o'clock Friday is kind of a weird time slot. So
people, that's true. People have so many of these stories that I'm sure.
Yes, there are so many of them. And we see a lot of people making fun of people for doing it. We don't see a lot of people making fun and then explaining what they were trying to accomplish. So if you like doing misandry, we are going to make good on our promises for it on Friday.
So we're gonna do an extra 10 minutes. I have no idea whether we'll have the full crew, but we're gonna push because we gave 3 minutes to the people, and I want those minutes back. Like we're gonna talk about the worst jobs in America, just like 10 or 15 minutes talking about it in the post show. So if you've got $1, and by the way, that rate might go up, so you want to get in while it's good. $1 will get you into the post show where we do this like pretty much for every show, and we talk about like extra stuff. So $1 at patreon.com/notsafe, and you can come hang out with us. That's it for today. So it's going to be good. It's going to be great. And thank you for hanging out with us for 1 hour. This was great. Zainab, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
If you want to join us for the post show, listen, you came on Labor Day with literally 1 day notice, like 1 or 2 days, a day and a half. And we were like, hey, it's Labor Day. Wonder what's happening over there in Virginia. Yeah. And you were like, yeah, we'll do it. So thank you for coming in the afternoon.
Of course.
During Labor Day to come hang out with us. That's just incredible. And it's why we love you.
I love hanging out with y'all. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, y'all. Have a good one. We'll see you later.